Hey, welcome back to my spiritual therapy. It's Miss Mocha, your spiritual therapist. Okay, so now I'm coming to give a recap of Job. So I read the book of Job, and because I was sitting here one day and I was just like, God, what you want me to read next? What you want me to study? And I just took the Bible, opened it up, and it landed on the first book of Job. The first, book, the first page, whatever. And so I started studying Job, and now I'm gonna do the recap of what it was all about. So I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I hit everything specific that was in the book. Okay, so Job was a man who was perfect and upright, one that feared God and eschewed evil. So I looked up the definition of eschewed, and it's to deliberately avoid, abstain from, or shun something. So Job feared God and he deliberately avoided, abstained from, and shunned evil. So I already know right there that this is probably why God wanted me to read this book, because this is what he has me doing. It's like he is making my life like the character or the prophets in the Bible. And it's like I gotta be like Joseph, I gotta be like Job, I gotta be like Moses, I gotta be like Esther, I gotta be like Ruth. Like my life is mimicking all these prophets, and it's hard. And I'm just like, why do I have to do all this? But I'll get to it, because this things that Job was doing, saying and feeling about God, is the same things that I be saying and feeling about God when I'm going through these situations. So we know, if you don't know, Job is the book that talks about how he had to long suffer through his situation. So it began where it started off saying that he had 10 kids and he was the greatest of all the men of the East. He had a very great household with service and numerous animals. He was wealthy and prosperous and well respected. And so one day Satan came to God to challenge or test Job, more so like he was testing and challenging God as well, God and Job. And he knew that God had blessed the work of Job's hand and his substance was increased in the land. So he knew Job was powerful, he was wealthy, he was, in good health. He was like a leader, and he wanted to attack him. Basically, he wanted to attack him, and so he had to go through God to do that, because he basically went to God's like, oh, you gave him all of this, but if I come and touch his stuff, touch him, or touch his life, he'll curse you. And so God knew, knowing that Joseph wouldn't, allowed it. So where was I? I just started talking on my own, but I'm gonna keep reading what I wrote. So he wanted to test them and say that if they touched Job and touched all that Job had, he would curse God to his face. So of course God accepted the challenge and granted Satan the ability to touch Job and see what would happen. So Satan was so sure that Job would turn on God. So he tried everything he could. So Satan killed all of his animals, all of his servants. He stole the animals. He either stole his animals from him or he took it. He killed his kids. Job lost everything. But through it all, he didn't sin, nor did he blame God. And so he still kept his integrity. And then Satan challenged and tested him more by causing him sore boils from head to toe. And so that's like, a bad skin disease where Job was left looking unrecognizable. And so even Job's wife asked him, why did he keep his integrity? And she advised him to curse God so that he would die and put himself out of his misery, basically. But Job refused, and he said that she spoke as a foolish woman, and he still didn't sin. So he didn't listen to nothing his wife was saying. He didn't really know that it was the devil doing this to him and what him and God had going on. Um, mm, okay, and so Job had three friends who heard of all the evil that was happening to him, and they came to mourn with him. and to comfort him. And I think I had a video where I had stopped there because, you know, things, I started getting attacked. Like, as soon as I started reading Job, I started getting attacked so bad. So it was like the devil was trying to knock me off studying this or whatever. And my life got so, you know, hard. And so I left off there where I thought the friends came to comfort him and show him support. Well, that's not all. So when they saw him, they didn't know him. They couldn't recognize him due to the skin disease. So they cried for him, sat down with him 7 days, 7 nights, and they didn't speak to him because they knew, you know, how great his grief was. He was grieving really hard. So they just sat there and grieved with him. Cool, that's some nice friends. You know, they come along and grieve with you. But as the story went on, it got even crazier. So, okay, so when Job felt okay enough from his grieving to speak, he cursed the day he was born when he finally did speak, and he just spoke a lot out of his grief. And the majority of the rest of the chapters in this book was Job and his friends conversing about Job's circumstance. Basically, they blamed Job and accused him of doing something wrong or sinning for God to allow this to happen to him. So Job started going back and forth with them, trying to prove his innocence, prove that he didn't do anything wrong, that this was just happening to him. And then the friends didn't believe him. They just kept, you know, going back and forth with him, blaming him, saying that he's sinful, telling them that God don't just do this to people. You have got to done something wrong for God to do this to you. Just a bunch of craziness. Just talking out the side of their neck, not knowing even what was going on themselves. And, you know, Job started complaining about his life. He hated it. He was bitter. He was even suicidal. And his friends made him feel worse. They kept arguing with him, saying that he was evil or he did some evil, and that's why he was suffering the consequences. And so Job is basically saying God is doing this to him, and he must have had his reasons, and that he didn't sin, that God just, he started like not accusing God, not blaming God, but he was saying, you know, God, you did this to me. Why are you allowing this type of stuff? So he was questioning him. He didn't blame him, but he was more so questioning, because like all the good he's done, all the, you know, people he respected, they respected him. Why would this be happening type of deal? And that's kind of like what I be saying too. Like, I know I don't do nothing wrong. I don't do this evil stuff, but yet all this evil happens to me. So I be on the same type of time. Like, God, why is this happening? How could you let the people treat me like this? How do you let this happen to me? And so that's how Job was. So he wasn't really blaming God. He was more so questioning why, when he's been such a good-hearted person. And he never turned his back on God. He never was evil. He never said anything bad about God. He wasn't like that. He was really righteous. So that's all Job was on. He just couldn't understand why it was happening. So he was sad, and he spoke of the things that happened to him. He said God destroyed him and brought his wrath upon him and made him his enemy. He wasn't aware that he was being tested by the devil and that God was allowing it. And then after that, everybody started turning against him. Well, we heard the wife, she wasn't too happy about him, and how he was acting. Like, he wouldn't curse God, he wouldn't go against God. So the wife wasn't supportive. He lost his troops, he lost his brothers, so he lost his I hate this time of year, boy. He lost his acquaintances. They were estranged from him. His kinfolk, which was his family, failed him. His familiar friends had forgotten him. Even the people that he lived with, and like his maids and everything, saw him as a stranger and an alien. His servants didn't respect him. They didn't listen to him anymore. And they said his breath is strange to his wife. And so I take that as they weren't intimate no more. She wasn't there for him. She wasn't the supportive, loving wife that she should have been. She didn't have his best interest, and she did not respect God herself, you know. And then it said even young children despised him. They started speaking against him, and those he loved turned against him. So he lost all his wealth, he lost his health, he lost the closest people around him, his servants, his maids, everything. He lost everything. All because the devil, was hating and wanted to take it from him, kill, steal, and destroy. That's all the enemy wants to do to everyone. And so Job kept trying to convince his friends that he was innocent and did no wrong to cause this intense sufferings. And still, he kept his integrity, he kept his righteousness, and he didn't speak wickedness nor deceit. He still didn't go against God. So that was the most of the chapters, just the dialogue between him and his friends. And then his friends were getting angry with him even because they kept trying to preach to him, saying he needed to basically you did evil, you need to repent. God do not do this to people who are upright and righteous. You must have done something wrong. And they just didn't believe him. And so after all that was done, God spoke to Job. And so that's basically the end of it, when God started speaking to Job. And he basically was like, who are you to question me? And he's like, you lack knowledge. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? So basically saying of himself, God, he is almighty, not Job. He made everything. He created everything. And asked Job, could he have done it? Could he command the earth, the animals, etc.? God was showing his power, and that Job didn't have any power. And so Job just stayed silent, while God was done talking to him like he should have. And then God gave him the opportunity to speak. And then when Job spoke, he humbled himself before God and confessed that God is almighty and that he shouldn't have questioned him when he didn't understand and didn't know what was going on. So he repented. And because basically God is like, I run this, I created you, I create everything. You don't know what's happening. You just supposed to trust me and not question me. Don't worry about it, because he knows that God is always good to him. But when you're going through suffering like that, you ain't thinking about not questioning God. You're hurting, you're suffering, you're feel like you're dying, like it's hard. And so that's why I know God understood, because I'll keep reading. So then Job humbled himself, and then after God spoke to Job, he spoke to Job's friends. So after God checked him, basically let him know that he shouldn't have been questioning him because he lacked knowledge and understanding. He didn't know what God had going on with the devil. And so God's like, he don't have to explain nothing to nobody. You just need to trust him and stay righteous. So God got mad at Job's friends because Job's friends weren't speaking the truth. So after God spoke to Job, he spoke to his friends and were angry with them for not speaking of God what is right, as Job had. They didn't tell the truth about God like Job did. So all that talking they did was wrong. So basically meaning what they were saying, oh, God's not going to do this to anyone who is righteous. And yes, he did. He did allow it to happen, because even though Job was righteous, they kept trying to make it seem like Job did sin, or Job did something wrong, or did something against God for God to, be angry with him and cause this stuff to happen. Well, that wasn't true. They were just speaking, but they weren't speaking right. So they got in trouble by God for what they were saying, because it wasn't true. God will allow you to suffer and go through things, even if you are righteous, even if you haven't sinned or did evil. So they got in trouble. And then at the very end, the last chapter, God blessed Job even more than he had in the beginning. So twice as much. And he got back his brothers, his sisters, his acquaintances. They ate bread with him in his home, and they gave him money and gold. They comforted him, and he got back his respect. And the Lord blessed him with more animals, more than he had before. He even was blessed with more children, 10 children again, 3 of the most beautiful daughters in all of the land. And then Joseph lived a long life and saw his sons and his sons' sons 4 generations. So he lived a long, blessed life, even though he had to go through all that suffering. And then he died full of days, old, and age. So that was the book of Job, and it was very much interested because I guess he wanted me to read it because I have and still go through so much suffering, long suffering. It is a fruit of the spirit. So once you take on those fruits of the spirit like he wants us to, you're gonna have to go through this process, the long suffering, the faith, the peace, joy, things like that. And he wanted me to read this because this is like what's happening to me. I'm being attacked in so many ways, and it's just a test. He allows the devil to test us, and we have to stay faithful. We have to stay true. We have to stay righteous. And he knows that that I am, that I'm not going to turn on him. And so at the end of it all, I know I have what to look forward to is to be blessed with twice as more. So that is Job, and that's all I wanted to put out here, the recap of it, and to let you all know God is telling me that I am the Job of, our day now, and he's allowed the devil to test me, and because he knew that I would be upright, perfect, and righteous like Job. And so he'll bless me in the end when it's all over. So I'm not worried about it. Of course it looks different at the testing that they put on, or the testing that the devil put on Job is way different from the things that I go through. But mine is still intense, mine is still harsh, mine is still suffering, and mine is consistent, like almost every day basically, or at least every week I have some type of humbling experience or some type of loss, like loss of a car, loss of income, loss of a job, loss of friends, loss of family, loss of respect. People are probably saying I did something wrong, or I did evil, or people talking behind my back. All this dead stuff that's coming in my life. People trying to kill me off, kill my kids off, kill my light, kill everything. So it's like the devil is trying to kill, steal, and destroy, especially those ones that are upright and righteous and perfect in God's eye, that don't go to evil. And the devil knows that once I turned my back on evil, it was for good. Like, not saying I was an evil person, but I was doing things that wasn't of God, growing up and even in my adulthood. But once God pulled me out of all that, I didn't turn back. And so even now, like my previous video talked about the narrow path and the wide path. And the wide path is basically everyone who is putting themselves first and their own desires and, material things, money, cars, flashy stuff, all that. And the narrow path is putting God first and God's commandments, God's laws, what he wants you to do, his plan, walking by faith, not by sight. And so that's the path that I'm on, the narrow path. And so on that path, not many go on that path. And so of course the devil doesn't want you on that path. He wants you on the wide path so he can use you as he sees fit and kill, steal, and destroy you and what you have and the people around you. But the path, the narrow path, is for eternal life, for God's glory, for what he has planned for you in the future. And so that's the path that I'm on. And so you're going to get attacked like that. And the devil knows that. He knows that I won't turn back to those things that the wide path has to offer. And so this is why God wanted me to read Job. But in the end, remember that through all the suffering, in the end, you get twice as more of what you lost. Those family members, friends, or you get new people, they come back, or you get new ones, children are restored, land is restored, wealth is restored, health is restored. So this is a good book to read, especially if you go through intense suffering like I do. And it helps because Job felt like he didn't want to be born, or he wanted to take his own life, or he wanted just to end the suffering. I ain't never been suicidal, and I never cursed the day that I was born, but I have questioned it. Like, what? I know I wasn't born to go through all this. Like, what is going on here? Why do I have so much loss in my life? So much dead things in my life? People trying to destroy me, take me and my children out. It makes no sense. We do nothing to no one. So that's why he wanted me to read Job, so I'll know the story. You know, I'm not alone. I didn't want to put this out there because it's hard to even talk about. Like, got my car fixed, it broke down again. Like, it's crazy. Losing jobs left and right. My finances always getting taken from me. He won't allow me to work a job 9 to 5. He won't allow me to go to school, finish my degree. He won't allow, just to get ahead. One minute I get a blessing, and then it's like, it's as soon as I get a blessing, it's like the devil want to put so many more curses on me, or put them in my path, or try to stop me from going down this path. So it's very much hard, like Job. But again, I just got to look forward to the end where he gives me back twice as more than what I had. So that is all I have. Thank you all for listening.